This is my first episode in my new series over the brief history of Finland. This time I'm going to be talking about the first part, which is the Swedish occupation of Finland from 1150 to around 1809. Now, obviously, it's very hard to pinpoint an exact beginning date for essentially Finland, especially because it was mostly tribal, if you want to call it that, before this time period, and primarily before Christianization and especially the occupation of Sweden. However, the Finnish people/language, from what I could find, generally moved to modern Finland at around 1900 BC, so they are very old inhabitants of this land. With the common Finnic language, essentially the predecessor to the modern-day Finnish language, being spoken around 2,000 years ago, so around 0 AD. Finland was the target of multiple Catholic crusades within the 12th and 13th centuries, and this is primarily the most important thing to know for the actual establishment of direct control over Finland, with Sweden. These crusades were part of the Greater Northern Crusades, which in one of my previous videos, I talked about the Teutonic Order in the south, in the Baltics. That is a part of these Northern Crusades, yet they wouldn't really fight the Finns. It would be the Swedish that would fight the Finns and colonize, especially these coastal areas, and bring them under direct control, and then convert them to Catholics, especially in this southwest region here. The Second and Third Crusade specifically would establish Swedish control in the 12th and 13th centuries. The First Crusade is weird because it's not really known if it actually existed or not. It's debated, it seems like, but it was mainly the second. The second one would establish essentially most of Swedish control, though a lot of it was very loose. And the Third Crusade essentially just expanded this out to the east more into these Karelian areas. By the 14th century, so by the 1300s, Finland was properly controlled by Sweden. Essentially, it's important just to know that Sweden essentially established direct control over these western parts of Finland, eventually moving up and also to the east. Next is the consolidation of Finland and also Russia's control. Swedish Finland was mostly sidelined for its early history. This is because compared to Sweden over here, it was usually less populated, but also much further away from actual Swedish core territory, especially since to get there fast, you had to cross a body of water. It was mostly sparsely populated forests, which it still generally is today, except for some major cities, especially in these northern regions, except for these coastal towns and forts. Generally, Finland was disregarded as simply a hinterland of the Swedish Empire, which there's some interesting evidence for this, especially with actual Swedish officials at this time recording their responses and their reactions to the Finnish people, even some essentially being surprised that Finland is even a part of the Swedish Empire because of how distinct, and generally they view them very negatively as a lesser human, essentially, in a way, compared to the Swedish people. For centuries, so around the 1600s to 1700s, Sweden would fight over the Baltic Sea region around here, including Finnish lands. It's very important to know at one point they did control the Baltics down here, and especially northern Germany further south, but in the Great Northern War from 1701 to 1721, against Russia to the east, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth down here, and other powers like Denmark, Norway, they lost most of their territories except for essentially just Sweden, modern-day Sweden, and also these Finnish territories, losing all of the Baltics and so forth. However, in the 1808 to 1809 Finnish War, Russia, aligned with France in the continental system during the Napoleonic Wars, would invade Sweden under the pretense that Russia was doing it to safeguard the continental system's interests and to prevent Sweden from trading with the UK, as was essentially the primary goal of this continental system. Sweden refusing made Russia invade in the east, and Sweden by this point had lost their essential military powerhouse status like over a century before, after the Great Northern War. So it was a relatively easy war, and Russia would take all of Finland in the modern day, in these eastern lands, and establish Finland as the Grand Duchy of the Russian Empire, taking it from Sweden. Now, it's important to know after this, which will be covered in my next video, Finland was a very unique part of the Russian Empire, which is also why it's usually seen somewhat distinct from the Russian Empire, but that'll be my video over Russian occupation of Finland.